Hello, this is Young Dungeon Master. Today let's switch gears from fantasy to something a bit more cyberpunky. Right now I have a Cyberpunk campaign running. Not gonna lie, the trailer for the game Cyberpunk 2077 started it all. Then we found out that the game was based on tabletop RPG, then we got our hands on it, then there was no stopping us. It almost sabotaged my Raymond loved game. We also wanted something new that did not involve fantasy or Warhammer 40k. So I had very little time to prep the campaign. Probably the shortest prep time of all my campaigns. I want to share with you how I prepared for Cyberpunk and what I learned from running a couple of sessions. First of all, make a list what is Cyberpunk for your group and focus on it. So here is mine. Corporations, zoning, value of human life and some cool tech. Let's start with zoning. When the game takes place in a single city, difference between areas become very important. Players will want to see some variety. So I have 5 zone types. Blue, completely corporate zone where one company have unlimited reign and power. Green, a luxury residential zone for the top percent. Yellow, where the rest of the workforce resides. Red, the zone that is slipping into anarchy. And grey, or combat zones, completely abandoned by any resemblance of the law. But not all the zones of similar type are the same. There are some variety. Red zones are different depending on the reason why they are slipping out of control, or drastically different dress codes in the blue zones, depending on the corporation in charge. Speaking of corporations, in Cyberpunk they are the worst of capitalism on steroids. I framed it as military-industrial complex on the streets. Think of the most hideous cases of customer exploitation and turn it up to 11 and stick it to the game. I read up on corporate culture as well and twisted it into something demonic. Not much of twisting was required, to be honest. Value of human life and basic rights are different in all zones and their borders. Let's look at the police. Private force that protects the green residents from the outside world. Guards that keep the population in order in yellow zones. And an occupying force in red zones, pacifying the unruly locals. In grey, they are border guards with orders to shoot on sight and infrequent raids into the zone itself. All this, in span of few blocks, is jarring for players at first, but that's what Cyberpunk is all about. Let's switch gears to something lighter. Cyberpunk is supposed to be near future, so it's a great opportunity to fill your world with some cool tech. I went through a ton of product design concepts. Movies are a good source too, and of course iconic books and comics. For me it is important to keep things grounded, so players would not get lost in new paradigms of technologies. That is kind of true to even most magical settings. You don't want to overload your players with some crazy stuff right off the bat. The major draw of Cyberpunk is body modifications. For me it was the central theme of the whole setting. I even made a special budget for the players that they had to spend to augment themselves. So when describing an NPC, cyber gear becomes as important as skin color, gender and the clothes they wear. Another vital aspect is virtual reality. Net running is something that attracts a lot of players. Now, if you are going to run Cyberpunk, think of how would you run the net. Who would have access to it, how cyberspace is different from the internet, why is it better or worse, or is it the same thing? This is the part where I would suggest to discuss it with your players at length on session 0. We certainly did. So there was no misunderstanding on what the web is and is not. So we are around 10 sessions in. What have I learned? That players abuse the power of crowdsourced expert opinion. Resources like Reddit, YouTube guides and Wikipedia really takes the wind out of scholar-type characters. In general, speed of acquiring information is rivaled only by the speed of communication. Texts, phone calls and photo and video sharing kicks the hell out of sending stones. And it sets the tempo for the rest of the game. Nobody got time to have a nice talk in the tavern. It is a few text messages and an online order for 3D printed gun that is delivered to you by a drone in your self-driving car while you negotiate price in your VR mansion, and it's all on the way to the mission location. And you will need that cash in Cyberpunk. I was astonished how effective Cyberpunk setting is at draining money from characters and how eager were my players to part ways with their hard-earned euro dollars. They spend their cash on clothes, food, online magazine subscriptions for crying out loud, and other near useless trinkets. Stuff that they would never waste gold in Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe they just enjoyed shopping in near future setting, or contextual advertisement and good old sales science and other marketing tricks are really that good. Maybe they were aware how deadly the Cyberpunk 2020 system is and wanted to treat their characters before a stray bullet would force them to make a new one. The deadliness of the system fits the Cyberpunk genre beautifully. Live fast and bright and die just as quickly and flashy. That is textbook Cyberpunk. At first I was afraid that not combat-oriented characters would suffer a lot in combat. I was dead wrong. With how deadly the system is, it really does not matter who shot a high-caliber pistol. It is as effective if solo fired it or the meditaking. During this campaign I tried a couple of new things that I am sure I will transfer to my D&D games. Major one is contacts. Characters will start with a couple of friends or people they know, like black market traders or officer in police force or even a gang leader. It gives players more options on how they engage with the world, kind of like in the World of Darkness systems, but less structured. Asking players to come up with short and long-term goals for their entire group and tie mechanical benefits to it. I tied experience gain to short-term goal completion. It cut down on screwing around and pointless shopping a lot. Completion of long-term goals would trigger a long time skip, useful if characters want to construct an office and furnish it, or learn a couple of new skills. Basically a trigger for a long downtime. Early on, to show the great variety of gadgets you could use in combat, I had a weapons expo. Characters had the mission there, but players spent half the session going from booth to booth and watching all the presentations. By the end of the expo they had a lengthy shopping list. So combat now is a lot more interesting than boring I point and shoot. So I would suggest having events in the world that showcase it, all the weird and quirky stuff. So this was my experience of getting into the new setting and trying a couple of new interesting things. I hope this video was as entertaining as it was helpful. If you like this video, please subscribe, it really means a lot to me. I see you in the next video and good luck with your rolls.